Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Wallsend history story. This week is video number 2 in the look back at some of the old shops that used to be on Wallsend High Street. As said with the previous video, this is what used to be there and what's there now. And a lot of the older shops, in terms of what you will see on screen as an example of them, will only have adverts as pictures. However, I am hoping to find a few old pictures that I can use. And I just want to add too that this is just a small selection of the shops. There's still a lot more, and some of them I will cover in the next few videos, but there will be some that I won't be able to cover at all, just basically due to the lack of information about them. Anyway, I hope you will enjoy this video and find it interesting. The first shop I am covering is John Day's Fruit and Veg Shop. Now, as some of you will know, there was more than one John Day's on the High Street, but I am going to focus mainly on the one on High Street West. At one time, this shop was one of the oldest in Wallsend, and was a shop almost everyone, those my age and older, would have heard of. And I can still see those little shelves with the green fake grass between the items for sale when I do think about the shop. And I know lots of people who always went to Days for their fruit and veg. My nana certainly shopped there, and I did too in later years. Days opened at a time when the high street had multiple shops selling the same things. You would often find a butcher's, a baker's, a veg shop, followed by another butcher's, baker's and a veg shop, all along the high street. But of course this was at a time when most people shopped daily, and there was enough business for all of the repeated shops to survive. And Days certainly did well to last as long as they did. The shop eventually closed down for good, possibly in around 2016, and by 2017 it was standing empty. And sometime in around 2018, work began to alter the shop for a different use. And from what I remember at the time, it was almost completely stripped back to nothing inside before being rebuilt. And today, in the same location, you will find the Wallsend Post Office. The post office, of course, has been in several different places in Wallsend over the years. On the High Street opposite this shop, on Station Road, in the Forum Co-op, and then back to the High Street again. And also, the post office has got quite a lot smaller over the years, as it is now just an area at the back of this shop. Not like the huge post office I remember on Station Road when I was a kid, with the sorting office next door to it. Of course, I couldn't possibly do videos of Wallsend High Street shops and not include good old Woolworths, or Woolies as I used to call it, and a lot of people called it the same as well. Now, the original shop was on the High Street opposite the Co-op on Carville Road, close to the now entrance to the Forum. But in 1959, the shop moved to the brand new building on the corner of Station Road and High Street East. The shop was built on vacant land that had previously been known as Conversation Corner, no doubt given that name as the area had seats where people used to sit and spend time chatting with their friends. And the land was often also used for the Wallsend Christmas tree. Now, I do kind of wonder if the tree was wonky then, like the ones we get today, where we kind of expect it to be wonky, or we feel that it's just not right, as the wonky Wallsend Christmas tree has kind of become a bit of a tradition. Going back to Woolworths though, this was one of those shops where you could buy just about anything, from clothes to sweets to makeup, paint and household items. And of course, who could forget the Woolies Pick and Mix or the Ladybird clothes? It was without a doubt a very popular shop, but sadly Woolies went into administration in 2008, and by 2009 all of their shops had closed. And I can remember going down to the shop on Boxing Day in around about 2009, I think that was when it went, when it was selling everything off before closing down, and I still have one of the oven dishes I bought that day for about £2. Today you can find Heron Foods in the old Woolies shop. The shop outside looks very much the same as Woolies did, as externally it really wasn't changed all that much at all. It was just painted in the Heron Foods colours. Prior to Heron's taking over the building, It was, for a short time, a shop with the name of Well Worth It, which was, if I remember rightly, a bit of a bargain store, but it really didn't last very long before that closed down, and I don't think I ever even had time to go in and see what it sold. And I can't really talk about Woolies without mentioning the old light-up map that used to be outside the shop. So many Wallsenders will remember pressing the buttons on the old map to see the "You are here" light up, and generally just fiddling about with the buttons to see how many lights you could get to come on all at once. I have to admit that I can't really think why it was so popular or why it's so fondly remembered, but sadly the old map is no longer there, and also sadly no one has ever been able to find out where it happened and where it went and what happened to it. I do still wonder if it is stashed away somewhere, but I somehow think that it has been melted down and made into bean cans by now. So maybe we should have a replica made and put back on the wall next to Heron's. The next shop I'm going to talk about was just over the road from Woolies, and that was Hill's. Although in all adverts the shop is known as Hill and Sons, but most people seem to refer it as simply Hill's. And this stood at 11 to 13 High Street East and was described in an old advert as selling household and general ironmongery, tools and stationery. Whenever this shop is mentioned on Wallsend Memories on Facebook, it always gets hundreds of comments, as people do seem to have great memories of the shop and of all the items hanging up both inside and outside of the shop. On one of the photos that I have seen of the shop, you can see the old tin baths hanging up outside. At one point in time, they also had a huge sign above the shop which covered the windows of the building upstairs. I believe Hill's closed sometime in the early 80s, but I don't know the actual exact date. Today, in the same location, you can find the Nationwide Building Society, which has been there for several years now, and as is often the case with the up-to-date shops, there's not much I can really say about them. I'm not a member of the Nationwide, and I don't think I have ever even been inside the shop. But what I can say is that at the sides of the sign, you can still see some of the old fancy carved shop fronts that almost all of the shops on the high street used to have. So this is a kind of tiny little daily glimpse into the past. I am sticking in the same area for the next shop, which is very different to video number 1, where I was kind of bouncing up and down the high street from one end to the other. This time the shop in question is the old Boots store. People still often refer to this part of the high street as Boots Corner. Boots the chemist, for anyone who didn't know, once stood at the corner of Station Road and the high street. The building was built in around 1903, and Boots was, I believe, the first shop to open on the ground floor. They were there for many years, and they do show up on a lot of the old photos of this part of the high street. Eventually they would move into the Forum, where they can still be found today. And I have to say that the Forum Boots is the only one that I can really remember, as I think the old shop closed down when I was just a few years old. One of the things many people also remember about the Boots shop was the mosaic with the words Boots written on it, which could be found at the entrance to the shop. Now this survived many shop changes over the years before finally being removed, and it is sad to see that it's gone, and it is a shame that it couldn't have been taken up bit by bit and moved into the current shop in the Forum. Today, in the same location, you can find Ramsden's Pawnbrokers, and it was when they took over that the mosaic name vanished. I can't really remember all of the shops that have been in the old Boots shop, but I do remember one called Quality Seconds way back in the 90s, and I can't actually believe that I've just said way back in the 90s, but it does feel like a long time ago now. In around 2012, the shop was known as Trends and Textiles. Now I know for sure that it's had many other uses, so if you can remember anything else that's been in the old Boots shop, do please let me know in the comments below. The next shop is still in a similar location, but it's a little further along. And when I was a kid, I had a few favourite shops, and one of them stood at the bottom of Laburnum Avenue. And that shop was Minard's Sweet Shop. Oh, it was such a treasure trove of amazing delights inside. All the jars of sweets, making it so hard to decide what to buy. And then you would utter the words, "A quarter of pear drops, please." Then you would get your little paper bag of sweets to take home. I always ate them really fast, as no matter how hard you tried, they would end up sticking to the paper after a day or so. Well, at least that was my excuse for eating everything quickly anyway. Going to Beamish Museum and into the shops there always reminds me of Minard's. And I also have to admit that I think you had a lot more choice back then. We seemed to have 1,000,001 different varieties of chocolate bars like Old Jamaica and the milk tray bars, just to name a couple. No wonder you could spend hours in the shop just trying to decide what to buy. In the same location today you will find what I believe is a kind of grocery shop, although it's not one I've ever been in, so I can't really say for sure. It has also in the past been a furniture shop, and I bought a flat pack wardrobe there a few years ago, and that took about 6 hours and a lot of swearing to put together. The shop front has also changed a lot since the days when it was Minard's. The next and last shop this week that I am covering is back up the other end of the High Street, and this shop stood on the corner of Border Road and High Street West and was Sidles. Now, Sidles was a newsagent and tobacconist, and according to an old advert, they would also deliver newspapers daily. Now, of course, all newsagents did this, which is probably why so many people remember delivering papers when they were kids. Sidles also sold paperback novels, which apparently included a selection of thrillers and westerns. And I do wonder if they sold Mills and Boon's paperbacks as I remember them, and they were very popular years ago. Before Sidles, the shop was called Brooks, which was also a newsagent's, and they had a couple of shops on the high street, and another of theirs had been closed to Woolworths. I never really went this far up the high street, and I don't really remember Sidles much at all, but it would continue as a newsagent's for many years before finally closing down in around 2017. Today, in the same location, you will find Zagro's Barbers, and it is fairly possible that I have pronounced that incorrectly, so I'm very sorry if I have, but I am quite rubbish at pronouncing names. And this is another shop that I haven't been in, so I can't really say much about it, but I do know that before it was a barber's, it was a shop called, I believe, Quorum 19, which sold handbags and hats. I don't think they were there all that long, but I know they were there in 2018, but by 2020 it was a barber shop again. Just like video number 1, I would love to hear some of your memories of the various shops I would have mentioned in this video. I know that I haven't included all that many, but as I said, there are lots of them, and I do try to keep these videos to around 10 or 12 minutes long, as I don't want to make them too long in the hope that you don't get too bored or fall asleep before I get to the end. And this one has actually run over 12 minutes, which I wasn't expecting it to do. But anyway, like I say, I would love to hear your memories of the shops that I have mentioned in this video. So I do hope that you have enjoyed this short little video about some more of the old Wallsend shops, and I do hope that you also found it interesting and that it did bring back some happy memories for you. I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again very soon.